Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm Zeus Kerravala from ZK Research, and I'm here for another thought leadership video. And I'm joined today by Jon Guy, who's the VP of Engineering for a pretty interesting company called RFCode. Jon, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? Tell us what you do and tell us who RFCode is.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm Jon Guy. I manage the engineering organization at RFCode. We provide real-time monitoring solutions for data centers and remote assets, and also provide those systems into a number of industrial applications as well. My team is responsible for developing the software and the hardware that makes those systems special.
Well, we're going to talk about some of the changes in the industry and remote monitoring. Before I do that, though, I'm going to give a quick shout out to eWeek. eWeek is my media partner, and all ZKasts are done in conjunction with the eWeek eSpeaks program. So, Jon, before we start talking about RFCode specifically, let's talk about the state of the industry. I'm sure you talk to a lot of customers. What are you hearing from your customers today? What's the post-pandemic IT organization going to look like?
Well, one of the things that we've seen coming out of the pandemic is it's really accelerated certain industry trends. It's really providing a lot more factors that drive remote distributed computing. We're seeing, of course, workers working remotely. It's seeing heightened awareness of the risks of having centralized resources. And I think it's also brought more of a global focus. I think it's brought awareness of how events can affect not just one country, but can quickly translate into global issues. And so if you're looking at your global infrastructure as a multinational company, or even as a small business that may be influenced by geopolitical events, I think you're thinking twice about how you manage risk and the moves you take proactively to reduce risk in your business.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting aspects of the pandemic too is there's been a lot of media focus on the impact of the worker, right? People were in hybrid work. What does that mean for them, both mentally and physically and things like that? Very little attention's been given to the IT pro, though, who also has to work remote and has to make these things work and has had to adopt new technologies. And we've seen, the complexity of IT certainly increase. In fact, I did a focus group with a group of CIOs a little while ago, and I think all of them would say that complexity has grown disproportionately to the level that their budgets and their staffing increase, so that's had kind of an interesting, I suppose it's a very interesting undertold story, with respect to what we cover in the media. So, so what you described there, what kind of new challenges does that create for IT, particularly in the area that you focus on with the data center, where historically, before I was an analyst, I was actually an IT pro, and I know we would just people our way out of data center issues, just threw more people at it. You had a lot of people local, and you could do that, but you can't do that anymore. So, what are some of those new challenges that your customers should be thinking about?
Well, yeah, just as you say, the ability to put somebody on a plane to go somewhere to fix a problem, and even once they get there, depending on lockdowns or status or health issues, they may not even be able to enter the facility. And so it's important to have eyes and to have data out of that operation or out of that part of your business. And you can't, as you say, you can't rely because of not just health issues, but staff shortages due to people being out of work, or just challenge recruiting the right people. Doing more with less people, and doing that through data, through sensors, through monitoring systems is even more critical part of any business today.
Yeah, so do more with less, right? That's something we've talked about. We've always heard that, and that is, it's easy to say, it's difficult to do. And I know every time we go through one of these transitions, it seems like the tools that we use to manage and monitor our environments change, but we often don't change them until we're at a point where it's simply not tenable to do it the old way anymore, right? So if IT pros want to get a bit of a jump on this, in this new world that we live in, what are the kinds of things they should be thinking about, from a tools perspective, to help them in a world where remote, dynamism, distributed, things like that are now the norm?
Right. Well, at RFCode, we break this down into three categories. One is asset security, and that is the physical location of the assets themselves. The second aspect of that is power systems, which of course has got a lot of attention recently with the strain on the power grid, and that translates into inside facilities as well. And then the third aspect is environmental monitoring. That is checking the temperature, the humidity, the cooling capacity, the airflow in an environment. And what RFCode provides is a real-time way to monitor all of those parameters, to see this on a single dashboard that you can customize around the specific requirements to your organization. So depending on how your infrastructure is put together, you can get insights that are uniquely tailored to the parameters that you care about. You can get alerts, you can get email reports, notifications, to give you insights. So it's both reactive when something moves out of specification, but it's also proactive in being able to drill down the data to generate reports that you can pull into your business tools or integrate with other systems to stay ahead of a problem. And of course, that is the best way to handle it, to be truly proactive. And so our systems, because they're wireless and use a proprietary 433 megahertz technology, are really ideally suited to these environments, these large-scale data centers, but also to more distributed computing situations.
Well, so the proactivity is kind of interesting because, you know, I write for a lot of public media sites, and it seems for years we've been talking about this trend where IT's got to become more proactive, and it's been, you know, kind of an argument of mine as I guess as a former IT pro. Sometimes I'm offended by that statement because I think IT's wanting to be more proactive. They just didn't really have the data to do it, right? And so how are you taking this kind of massive amount of data that's out there and turning it into insights that allows IT to actually be proactive?
Right. Well, we have dashboards that are part of it, and that is digesting it down. So for example, if you're monitoring power, you're taking the data from the PDUs, we pull it in through our system, so it's an out-of-band system. And in the case of power, you can take a look at your power utilization as a percentage of your overall capacity. You can look at load phase and balancing. If you have more computing assets on one phase than another, you can get ahead of that problem. So that's just one very specific example of the sort of data that you can get a look at from RFCode's CenterScape system.
Right now, I think initially I had kind of bucketed RFCode as a data center, you know, management vendor, but you actually work with other IT domains, correct? Like what are you doing in the non-data center areas, I suppose?
Right. Well, there's the data center, the core large-scale data center business, and many of these are private cloud businesses. Then we also have quite a presence in co-located compute resources, where you've got multiple organizations in the same facility. And then looking out beyond that as you move to what some people call the edge, or which really, in many cases, is as simple as a lights out data closet. We have solutions for that as well. And this is increasingly part of our focus as more of these compute resources get closer to the edge, to the customer, due to latency or reliability or just the amount of data that's being moved around, and keeping it locally and making decisions locally makes a lot more sense.
I'm glad you brought up the E word, being edge. Well, can you help define what that is? I hear every vendor today talk about edge, and you know, so I hear of IoT edge, campus edge, Wi-Fi edge. You know, from your perspective, what exactly is the edge?
Well, I think from my perspective, it really depends a lot on where you're standing. You know, when you look out across, maybe you're looking out from the data center, the edge to you, maybe some remote compute resources in a data closet. Of course, if you were to walk out to the data closet, your perspective might change a little bit again, because then you see, well, actually, there's even more distributed resources. There may be some point of sale systems or some asset management equipment, scanning, barcode scanners, things like that go a little closer to the edge. And then probably if you move out to that point, you're going to look a little further, I come from a semiconductor background, and you're going to see chips inside of systems that they would consider the edge, cameras that are enabled with intelligence. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all answer. It's almost, the closer you get to the edge, you see there's a little more edge out there. But for which is what makes it so fascinating, right? We're pulling all of this this data from this evolving edge, and it's all important because every decision point, every computer, no matter how distributed it is important to the health of the organization. So really, it's all of that, but depending on where you're standing, it may be a slightly different definition, which I think is which is why you get so many different answers to that question.
Yeah, well, and I suppose that's what drives the complexity up, right? It's just there isn't, data centers were fairly easy to understand. There was one centralized location for data. And from my perspective, I thought of the edge as just anything that's not that centralized data center.
Mm-hmm.
And all those other areas are I guess are edgy, and add to the complexity. So if for anyone watching this video, if they're struggling with what to do, in some of the areas you plan, how do they get started? So describe your product, how it works, how it gets deployed, what the deployment models like, things like that.
Right. Well, our primary product, CenterScape, uses the 433 megahertz technology and has wireless sensors and a reader gateway that's installed on site. So this would typically be installed inside your own network. You manage it, you own the software, you install the software on your compute resources. Now, it does support very large scale. That's not to say it's just at a single location. It can be run across a globally distributed organization. So that's great for data centers. That gives you the ability to also branch out with your on-prem network to your own closets. And now we have a new solution that's coming that's more of a cloud-based solution. And so this is ideal for customers that may not be operating their own data centers, but want to have the same sort of visibility on the distributed locations. This new product is called Sentry, and we announced it in April, and will be shipping very soon.
And can they work in a hybrid model?
Absolutely, yeah. We have edge support for distributed data closets with our existing CenterScape solution, with support for cameras and to give you visibility if you have remote locations, or if you're looking more, if you're not already set up with our CenterScape solution, it may be that Sentry is the right fit for your monitoring needs.
And so if can you go into a little bit of detail too on, from a roadmap perspective, if somebody deploys your solution today, what do they get, and then what's coming in the future?
Okay, well, with CenterScape, what they get today is a big range of sensors, as well as a lot of integrations. And so we have integrations at the sensor level. For example, I think I mentioned earlier, we have the ability to take data from PDUs, power distribution units. And really, the cool thing about what we do there is it doesn't require cabling to those PDUs. In some PDU models, we'll connect up to the serial port. In other PDUs, we actually support SNMP, so that we can go in and get the data over a standardized bus. And so that means, again, no cabling, because it's a unidirectional wireless interface. There's no security concerns for somebody going in and taking control of your PDU. So we give you visibility on that. And then we have other sensors for other integrations, and some that are customized. So we have very standard generic interfaces like 4 to 20 and 0 to 5 volt if you want to get data from another system. And then we have integrations within our CenterScape software into building automation systems, into any other software tool that you would want to integrate into your data center. So RFCode's CenterScape solution can be your pane of glass, or if you already have existing systems that you want to work with, we can do that too. All
right, thanks for that, Jon. Just one last question then. If someone's watching this and they want to learn more about your product and get going, where should they go?
Well, you can head to rfcode.com/Sentry. That has all the details on our new Sentry edge monitoring product. This is the product that will give you a view of your lights out data closet or any other remote edge environment that you want to get visibility in to get ahead of those problems.
Okay, and for those of you watching, I'll make sure I include that link in the product in the YouTube description down below. So anyways, Jon, anything else to add? I think this has been a pretty interesting discussion. I think one of the key messages I'm taking away from this is that, you know, the IT pro's job today is significantly different than it was even 2 years ago. And along with that comes, you know, the need for new tools. And if you're using legacy tools to manage kind of a next generation business, you're probably destined to fail. So, so I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I think that's a great summary. Thanks for letting me speak about this. And yeah, please check out rfcode.com and take a look at our products.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. On behalf of Jon, I'm Zeus Kerravala from ZK Research. Don't forget to click to subscribe, and I'll see you next time on ZKast.